dangerous. I didn't have time to explain or negotiate. I just shouted, "Get out the street," not because I wanted to scare them, but because love made me urgent. Love made me loud. Love made me interrupt their fun for the sake of their future. That's the tone God is using right now. He's not whispering in this hour. He's shouting. He's calling his children back from the edge. And it's not because he wants to ruin your plans. It's because he wants to preserve your purpose. See, when the times grow darker, God speaks louder. And we are in one of those moments. You don't have to be a prophet to see that the world has tilted. Up looks like down. Right looks like wrong. And truth has been traded for comfort. But God doesn't shift with the culture. He doesn't bow to popularity polls. He speaks with eternal clarity and divine authority. And right now, he's calling for obedience in a time of uncertainty. You can feel it, can't you? That weight in your spirit. That sense that something is changing, that something is coming. You can't explain it in words, but your soul knows. That's not anxiety. That's alertness. That's the Holy Spirit setting off alarms that can't be silenced by distraction. Because heaven is saying, this is not the time to drift. This is the time to anchor. And anchoring starts with obedience, not tomorrow's obedience, not next month's obedience, today's obedience, immediate obedience, the kind that doesn't ask for the full blueprint before taking the first step. The kind that says, yes, Lord, even when the instructions don't make sense, because real obedience doesn't require full understanding, it requires full surrender. That God is calling for Noah's to build when there's no sign of rain. He's calling for Abraham's to go without knowing the destination. He's calling for Esther's to rise even when the risk is real. And he's calling for Abraham's to go without knowing the destination. He's calling for Esther's to rise even when the risk is real. To say yes to his voice even while the world says wait. This is the kind of obedience that shifts history, the kind that builds arcs, parts seas, topples giants, and opens prison doors. But it only happens when you obey on this side of the miracle, not after. So when God says move, don't ask him for more evidence. Don't ask him for a second opinion, just move. Because obedience in uncertain times is not optional. It's urgent. When God speaks, there is weight in his words. Eternal weight. He doesn't talk just to fill the silence. He speaks to shift the atmosphere, to rearrange destinies, to realign lives. And when he speaks, he expects movement. He expects response. But here's what happens too often. God gives a word and we say, let me think about it. God gives an instruction and we say, maybe tomorrow. But let me remind you, delay is not just delay. Delay is disobedience wearing a nice outfit. You don't get credit in heaven for partial obedience. You don't get rewarded for thinking about obeying. There's no blessing for hesitation. Because when God gives you a command, it's not a suggestion, it's a divine appointment that has an expiration date. The manna didn't last past the day it was given. The window of grace to board the ark closed, and when the angel passed over Egypt, you didn't have until the morning to apply the blood. The enemy wants you to believe that you've got time, that you can wait, that there will be a better moment, a less risky time, a more convenient season, but that's a lie. The longer you wait, the more ground you give the enemy, and by the time you're ready to obey, the moment God assigned may have already passed. I know what it's like to wrestle with God's timing. I've had moments when I knew God was telling me to do something, make a move, say the hard thing, take a step into the unknown, and my flesh hesitated. My logic tried to talk me out of it, but every single time I waited longer than I should have, I paid for it. Not always in money. Sometimes in peace, sometimes in clarity, sometimes in open doors that shut before I knocked. God doesn't need us to understand. He needs us to obey because he sees what we can't see. He's working on levels and layers far beyond our comprehension. And sometimes that one step of obedience today is what unlocks the breakthrough that's been held up for years. That's why when he speaks, you've got to move, even if it scares you, even if it stretches you, even if it doesn't make sense to anybody else. And let me tell you this, obedience will always cost you something, but disobedience will cost you more. It might cost you peace. It might cost you time. It might cost you the very thing you've been praying for. Don't trade divine instruction for comfortable delay. Don't silence God's voice with your convenience. There is a reason God is speaking before August 9, 2025. There is something he's trying to protect you from, prepare you for, and position you to receive. But none of that can happen if you keep treating divine instruction like optional advice. So today, don't just hear the voice of God, obey it. Immediately, fully, boldly, because obedience isn't just about following God. It's about trusting that where he leads, his purpose is waiting. Before every breakthrough, there's a battle. That's not just a spiritual principle, it's a spiritual pattern. You can trace it through every page of scripture and every chapter of your life. Right before the Red Sea parted, Pharaoh's army closed in. Right before David took the throne, he was hiding in caves. Right before Jesus rose, he was crucified. So if all hell is breaking loose in your life, don't panic. It might just mean heaven is about to break in. What you're experiencing right now may not be punishment. It might be pressure before the promise. The enemy doesn't waste energy attacking people who aren't a threat. The warfare you're facing is proof that you are on the verge of something significant. You're not crazy. You're not weak. You're not forgotten. You're targeted. Because when you obey God and position yourself in alignment with his will, Satan sees what's coming before you do. And he panics. He throws distractions at you. Temptations, fatigue, conflict, delay, doubt. He'll stir up confusion in your relationships, fear in your mind, anxiety in your spirit, all to make you stop short of the breakthrough. But hear me, don't stop now. This is the moment to press in, not pull back. You see, spiritual warfare is the devil's last attempt to stop something he can't control. And what he can't stop, he tries to sabotage. He knows your potential. He's seen your prayers. He's overheard the promises God made over your life. And the only way he can try to interrupt it is by getting you to quit before it happens. You think the storm is a sign you're off track. But what if it's confirmation you're right, where you're supposed to be? What if the resistance is the evidence that you're in position for the release? That's why God is calling you now. Not next year, not after the chaos settles. Now, because if you wait until the warfare dies down, you'll miss the reason the warfare came. You'll miss the moment. So don't be surprised when things get harder right before they get holy. Don't be shocked when you feel like giving up right before God shows up. It's not the end, it's the beginning of something powerful, but you've got to endure the battle to see the breakthrough. The heat you're feeling is not just the enemy, it's the refining fire of God preparing you to carry what he's about to release. And if you faint in this season, you'll forfeit the next. So gather your strength, shake the dust off your feet, and stand your ground. You are not losing, you are leveling up. You are not abandoned, you are being anointed. And this warfare is not to destroy you, it's to distinguish you. Stay the course. Heaven is closer than you think. There are moments in history when time isn't just ticking, it's counting down. When God marks a date, it's not casual, it's covenantal. He isn't bound by time, but he speaks through it. He uses moments, specific, divine appointments to wake up those who've been sleepwalking through their purpose. And August 9, 2025, that's one of those moments. It's not just a date on the calendar. It's a divine line in the sand, a threshold, a turning point. Something is stirring in the spiritual realm, something that can't be seen with the naked eye, but can be deeply felt by the discerning heart. That's why you've been unsettled. That's why your routine isn't satisfying you anymore. That's why the things that used to entertain you now feel empty. God is shaking you awake. He's whispering through circumstances and shouting through silence. He's saying, you can't live like this anymore, not with what's coming. God gives warnings because he gives chances. He sends alarms because he still wants to show mercy. When Nineveh was headed for destruction, God didn't destroy it without notice. He sent Jonah. When Sodom was about to fall, he gave Lot the chance to flee. When judgment was set to hit Egypt, he told his people to apply the blood and stay in the house. And when Jesus was about to die, he warned the disciples over and over again, but most of them didn't really listen until it was too late. Don't make the mistake of ignoring divine urgency because of personal comfort. Don't shrug off this call as emotional hype. This is not about panic. It's about preparation. It's about recognizing the signs of the times and aligning your heart, your home, and your habits with God's will before it's too late. See, God's voice is like a spiritual GPS. If you ignore the reroute long enough, you might end up lost, and not every detour has a road back. August 09 isn't a threat, it's a lifeline. It's heaven giving you one more chance to get things right, one more moment to break that cycle, one more opportunity to step into obedience without regret. So many people are walking around spiritually numb, thinking they have forever. But forever begins with today's decision. This isn't the time to be passive. This isn't the time to scroll past conviction, to swipe away truth, to drown out God's voice with entertainment and excuses. This is the time to listen. Carefully, humbly, urgently. You may not know what exactly is going to happen on August 09, but God does. And if he's saying prepare, if he's saying repent, if he's saying return, you don't wait to understand the reason. You respond because you trust the revealer. Because when God marks a moment in time, everything after it is different. This is the moment to rise, not in pride, not in fear, but in purpose. This is the time to respond, not with hesitation, not with doubt, but with holy conviction. God is calling his people off the bench and into the battle. He's calling those who've been hiding in caves of insecurity, shame, and past failure to come out and step fully into the assignment he's been whispering to their hearts in secret. You've been waiting for confirmation, but this is your confirmation. You've been waiting for a sign, but the stirring in your spirit is the sign. You've been praying for God to speak, and now he's shouting, rise up, now is the time. This isn't about being ready in your own strength. It's about saying yes in spite of your weakness. Because when you respond to the call, his strength is made perfect in your surrender. So many of us are living below our calling. We've adjusted to spiritual mediocrity, settled for survival instead of surrender, and accepted comfort over calling. But you weren't created to coast, you were created to conquer. You weren't saved to sit in the background, you were saved to stand on the front lines. The world doesn't need more echo, it needs your voice. Not the version of you that's filtered, polished, or edited, but the real, raw, redeemed you who has walked through fire and come out with a testimony. Some of you are waiting for everything to be perfect before you step out. But faith doesn't wait for perfect conditions. It moves when God says move. God isn't looking for people with perfect resumes. He's looking for willing vessels. People who will say, here I am, Lord, use me. People who won't just talk about revival, but will live it. People who will speak truth when the world demands silence, who will stand when others bow, and who will act when others hesitate. There's a generation waiting on the other side of your obedience. There are souls connected to your surrender. There are lives that won't shift until you step into alignment. And that's why the enemy has fought you so hard, because he knows what's on the other side of your yes. This is not the hour to retreat. This is the hour to reignite, to fan the flame that's been burning low, to remember the prophecies spoken over your life, to return to your first love and rediscover the fire that once had you praying with tears and worshiping with abandon. It's time to get your edge back, your voice back, your fight back. You don't need another open door. You need to walk boldly through the one God already gave you. You don't need more followers. You need more faith. And you don't need to figure it all out. You just need to obey. God is sounding the alarm. And he's not just calling the strong, the famous, or the gifted. He's calling the willing, the broken, the hungry, the desperate, the ones who say, whatever it costs, wherever it leads, I'm in. So rise. respond, and reignite your calling. The world is dark, but your light was made for this hour. You were born for such a time as this. You were never meant to blend in with the crowd. You were never meant to live a watered down version of your faith. You were never meant to shrink in the presence of darkness. From the very beginning, God set you apart. Before you ever took your first breath, heaven had already stamped your soul with purpose. You are not an accident, not a background character, not just a name on a church roll. You are a chosen vessel assigned to this moment in history with divine intentionality. And now, more than ever, God is calling you to remember who you are. The enemy has tried everything to make you forget. Life has thrown blows. Disappointment has weighed heavy. And you've questioned if you still carry the fire you once did. But that fire isn't gone. It's buried under the ashes of delay, fear, and fatigue. And now God is blowing his breath on those embers. He's saying, stir it up, fan it into flame. Don't let what you've been through convince you that I'm done with you. You see, the call of God doesn't expire. It doesn't fade with age. It doesn't wither with time. If he called you, he's still calling you. If he anointed you, he hasn't changed his mind. But what's required now is a response, a yes that's louder than your excuses, a surrender that silences your insecurities, because purpose demands participation. God doesn't move through the most qualified, he moves through the most available. And right now, availability looks like showing up when you feel empty. It looks like praising through the pain, praying through the silence, serving even when you're overlooked. Because in the kingdom of God, the ones who are willing to go unseen for a season are the ones he raises in due time. God is not ignoring your faithfulness, he's preparing you for a release. The weight you feel, that's not failure, that's calling. That's the pull of destiny stretching you, maturing you, deepening your roots so you can carry what's coming. Don't mislabel your process. Don't curse the cocoon when you were made to fly. And don't let temporary struggle steal eternal significance. God is saying, wake up, rise up, take your place. Not because he needs you to be perfect, but because he desires you to be present. Prison in prayer, prison in worship, prison in your calling. The world doesn't need more polished Christians, it needs prison ones. Those who carry authenticity, boldness, and the oil of intimacy with God. You carry more than you know. There are answers inside of you, solutions inside of you. Prophetic words, healing hands, breakthrough prayers, they're in you, but they don't activate until you step out in faith. So stop waiting for someone else to give you permission. Heaven already did. This is your time. Not next year, not once life gets easier. Now, because what God is about to do, he's doing quickly, and he's looking for those who are ready to move at the sound of his voice. Don't miss your moment trying to make sense of it. Just say yes and watch what God does with a willing heart. You don't need to see the whole staircase. God is only asking you to take the next step. That's how faith works. It's not about having all the answers or knowing the full plan. It's about trusting the one who does. We spend so much time trying to map out every detail to eliminate every risk, to ensure we won't fail, but God never promised you clarity. He promised you presence. And if he's with you, that's more than enough. Too often, we wait for comfort before we obey. We wait for confirmation to match our preferences. We want peace to come before we step. But in the kingdom, peace often follows obedience. Peace isn't the absence of risk. It's the presence of God in the risk. And sometimes your breakthrough is on the other side of that scary, uncomfortable, seemingly illogical step of faith. Think about Peter. He didn't walk on the water while sitting in the boat. He had to step out. He had to leave the safety of what he knew, surrounded by wind and waves, and respond to one word, come. That's all Jesus said. No guarantee he wouldn't sink. No explanation of how the water would hold him. Just one word, and it was enough. God is still speaking that same word today. Come out of fear. Come out of complacency. Come out of cycles that keep you spiritually numb. Come out of old mindsets that have kept you trapped in limitation. You weren't made to stay where you are. You were made to move when God speaks. And yes, it will cost you. Obedience always does. It'll cost you your comfort, your image, your need to control the outcome. But what you gain will far outweigh what you leave behind. Because on the other side of obedience is where the miracles live. That's where you find divine favor, supernatural alignment, and open doors no man can shut. The enemy wants you to freeze in fear, to keep analyzing instead of acting. He wants you stuck in what ifs, so you never step into what's next. But your future is not built on fear, it's built on faith, and faith doesn't play it safe. Faith says, if God said it, that's enough. This isn't the time to second guess the voice you already know is his. You've been hearing him. You've felt the nudge. You've seen the signs. Now it's time to respond, not with delay, not with partial obedience, but with a wholehearted yes. Because when you obey, even in uncertainty, heaven backs you up. And as you move, step by step, the path will unfold. The provision will meet you. The grace will sustain you. But none of that is unlocked until you act. God honors movement. So don't let fear paralyze your purpose. Don't let confusion cancel your calling. You don't have to understand it fully to walk in it faithfully. God is looking for people who will move at his voice, even when they can't yet see his hand. People who say, even if I don't know where this leads, I know who's leading me, and that's enough. Let that be your declaration in this hour. Let obedience be your worship. Let trust be your anthem. And let faith, not fear, write the next chapter of your story. Some of you have been circling the same mountain for far too long. You've prayed about it, you've cried over it, you've fasted, pleaded, and asked God for change. But deep down, you know, it's not a prayer issue anymore. It's a movement issue. God is saying, you've heard my voice, now it's time to move. You can't keep praying for direction while ignoring the direction already given. At some point, obedience must catch up with revelation, because revelation without response leads to stagnation. You can't walk in new seasons with old obedience. What got you here won't take you there. There is a fresh demand on your spirit, and it requires a deeper yes, a stronger faith, a higher level of surrender. God is calling you to grow up in your calling, to stop playing it safe, to stop delaying what you know he told you to do. Your next miracle isn't waiting on more favor, it's waiting on your feet to move. Think about the Israelites standing at the Jordan. The waters didn't part until the priest stepped in. Not when they stood near it, not when they discussed it, not when they waited for a sign, but when they put their feet into the water while it was still flowing. That's when the breakthrough came. And it's the same for you. Some doors won't open until you walk toward them. Some answers won't come until you trust God enough to move without them. God doesn't bless passivity. He blesses faith in motion. Some of the delay you're experiencing isn't demonic. It's disobedience dressed up as indecision. You've been asking God to confirm what he already made clear. You don't need another prophetic word. You need to act on the last one. You don't need more signs. You need more courage. You keep saying you're waiting on God. But maybe, just maybe, God is waiting on you. Waiting for you to take him at his word. Waiting for you to stop overthinking and start stepping. Waiting for you to believe that what he put inside you is already enough to begin. This is the season where delayed obedience could cost you more than you realize. The window is open now, but it won't stay open forever. There's a divine urgency in the spirit, a pressing, a pulling, a sense that heaven is aligning things quickly. And God is calling his people to match the pace, to stop dragging their feet, to stop looking for validation from people who were never assigned to understand their calling. You don't need their approval. You need God's assignment, and he's already given it. So shake off the fear, break up with the hesitation, let go of the lie that you're not ready. If God called you, you're ready enough. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be willing. Let your next step be your act of worship. Let your obedience be louder than your doubt. This is your time to stop circling and start conquering. The mountain you've been walking around is not your home. The promise is on the other side of movement. There's a difference between being busy and being obedient. We've learned how to fill our lives with activity, meetings, ministries, goals, projects, yet somehow still feel distant from God's presence. Because obedience isn't measured by how much we're doing, but by how much we're aligning. You can be doing a lot for God and still not be walking with God. He's not after your schedule, he's after your surrender. There's a weight that comes with obedience, not because God is trying to burden you, but because he's trying to build you. He's stretching your capacity so you can carry what's coming. The calling on your life is bigger than your current comfort zone. That's why things have felt tight lately. That's why the usual rhythm isn't working anymore. That's why the same prayers don't stir you like they used to. You're being invited into a deeper dimension of obedience, a higher place of trust. And here's the truth. Next level obedience will cost you. It may cost you your pride, your plans, even certain relationships. It may pull you away from the familiar, away from what's predictable. But what God has on the other side of your obedience is far greater than anything you're being asked to leave behind. Sometimes God doesn't show you what's next because he wants to see if you'll obey without knowing. Will you follow when it's foggy? Will you trust him when it's tight? Look at Abraham. God said, leave your country, your family, and your father's house and go to a land I will show you. Not a land he had already described. Not a place with GPS coordinates. Abraham moved with a promise, not a plan. And that's where many of us are right now. God is saying, move, but we're waiting for a map. And the truth is, the map comes after the movement. The blessing is in the obedience. The provision is in the yes. The revelation is in the response. Don't wait for clarity when God is looking for commitment. Don't stall your obedience trying to get consensus from people who didn't hear what you heard. Sometimes God speaks to you in a way others won't understand, and that's okay. You're not called to please the crowd, you're called to follow the cloud. Delayed obedience not only postpones your progress, it creates distance between you and God. And the longer you delay, the harder it gets to hear his voice clearly. Obedience keeps your spiritual ears tuned, your heart soft, your spirit ready. It's not about perfection, it's about posture. God is not looking for flawless people. He's looking for faithful ones. So ask yourself, what have I been putting off? What instruction have I downplayed, excused, or tried to revise? What has God told me that I've buried under busyness? Because revival doesn't begin with hype. It begins with obedience. Fire doesn't fall on talent. It falls on the altar of surrender. And now is the time. Not next season, not when you feel more secure, not when the conditions are ideal. Now, because something sacred is tied to your next step. Something eternal is waiting on the other side of your yes. Some of you are carrying promises that feel like they've been buried under the weight of delay. You believed, you prayed, you even obeyed, but the results haven't matched the expectation, and now you're wondering if you missed God, or worse, if God forgot you. But hear this clearly, delay is not denial. Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it's not coming. God is not slow, he's strategic. He's not punishing you with waiting. He's preparing you through it. There is a sacred tension between what God said and when it shows up. And that tension is where your character is built, your roots go deeper, and your faith is refined. That's the space where you learn to worship when nothing moves, to pray when nothing changes, to stand when everything around you says sit down. That's where the true followers of Christ are forged, not in the mountaintop experiences, but in the long, hard, hidden seasons of trust. And don't think for a second that God has gone silent. Just because he's not updating you doesn't mean he's not working. He's always working in dimensions you can't see, through people you haven't met, behind closed doors you didn't even know existed. What looks like nothing is often everything being orchestrated in the background. Heaven is aligning, shifting, arranging